Chambers 0 and 1 are the worst levels in the Portal speedrun. For a game that is usually full of crazy glitches and fast-paced gameplay, the first couple of levels are just the opposite of that. In these chambers, the player has no portal gun and is faced with some of the simplest puzzles. On top of this, the level starts with a 57-second unskippable cutscene, making it the slowest level in the entire game. However, despite the lack of a portal gun, speedrunners have still found ways to completely break these levels. Specifically, in 2021, the holy grail of Portal speedrunning was discovered, the vault skip, a trick that allowed players to skip the 57-second cutscene at the start of the game. It was easily the most sought-after skip in the entire run, and when it was found, it saved nearly 20 seconds in any percent. Because of this, it was generally accepted that this would be the end-all speedrun strategy for the chamber. But just recently, speedrunners found something even faster. Let's take a look at how Portal speedrunners continue to break the start of the game. Before talking about the speedrun strats, let's quickly go over the way you're supposed to play the first couple levels of Portal. The game starts with a 57-second cutscene, where you wake up in the vault and GLaDOS introduces herself. After this, the portals open, and you're let loose into Chamber 0 to solve the impossible puzzle of placing a cube onto a button. After an elevator ride into Chamber 1, you're tasked with a new puzzle, where yet again, the solution is to place a cube on a button, but this time using portals, which automatically cycle through the smaller sections of the level. Then another elevator brings you into Chamber 2, which has around 25 seconds of GLaDOS talking at you until you finally get access to the single portal gun. For speedrunners, this ends the boring part of the game, because even with one portal, we can completely skip most of the puzzles. Despite its simplicity, these first couple of chambers have gone through a ton of strat progression throughout Portal's speedrunning lifetime. In fact, I've already made 2 other videos on this channel covering some of the more significant discoveries. So if you're curious and want the full context, you can watch those, but I'll quickly get you up to speed on the current route. Speedrunners would start by performing Vault Skip, where you would get stuck in the bed during its closing animation right after waking up, and then use the radio to push yourself and gain speed while you're stuck. By spamming saving and loading, you can use this speed to clip through the glass and escape the vault 50 seconds early. This is basically the holy grail of Portal speedrun skips. The vault was a 57-second unskippable cutscene right at the start of the game, so before this was found, speedrunners had been theory crafting a way to break out of it for over a decade. Once out of the vault, a slick cube throw gets us through Chamber 0. In Chamber 1, speedrunners perform a trick called Egg, which is a pretty nonsensical name for a pretty nonsensical strat. By jumping off of this cube while it's on the edge of a portal and spamming quick save and quick load, we can go through the portal and trigger the save glitch. If this is your first time hearing about the save glitch, it's one of the more notorious glitches that breaks the game in many, many ways. But for this chamber, all you need to know is that it allows the player to walk through some walls, depending on where their portals are. In this instance, it also teleports the player behind the blue portal to the hallway with the ending elevator. And since the save glitch is active, we can walk through the closed door to ride the elevator out of bounds. After a well-timed jump and save load before the loading screen, the player gets put on top of the level in Chamber 2, so you can maneuver right over the portal gun and save load clip back inbounds, saving the 25 seconds of waiting. So despite not having a portal gun, speedrunners still have more than enough at their disposal to break these chambers. Since this route was incorporated in 2021, there really weren't any new theories or sought-after skips remaining in these levels. After all, we skip just about every piece of downtime the game throws at us, so speedrunners were pretty content with their solution. But of course, it wouldn't take long for another game-breaking glitch to be discovered, because in May of 2025, a seemingly innocent bug was brought to the attention of the speedrunning community. And it wasn't even a gameplay bug, it was actually something in the settings. There are a lot of small weird things in the settings, like changing your portal render depth, setting a key to toggle closed caption sound effects, or setting a key to whatever a strafe modifier is. But on the mouse page of the settings, you have the pretty standard option to change the mouse sensitivity, with a slider and an input box. The slider ranges from 0.1 to 6, but the text box lets you input numbers much larger than that. You can input numbers well into the tens of millions, but go too high and the game caps you and sets you back to 6. Now this in itself isn't too notable. You can set your sensitivity stupid high, but if you exclude the view snap technique used in speedruns, there really isn't anything too appealing about a stupidly high sensitivity. It just makes the game harder to play. However, on older versions of the game, like version 3420 that speedrunners play on, this text box behaves differently, as here, there is no upper limit to what the user can input, so you could put the biggest number you can think of in here. Well, only if this is the biggest number you can think of. This is the highest possible value you can store in a 32-bit floating point number, which is how Portal stores your mouse sensitivity. Input any value higher than this, and the game can't properly parse it. But instead of some sort of reasonable default, the game interprets the number as infinity. Seriously, after inputting a massive number in this box, you can check the developer console to see that your sensitivity is now 1.#inf00. Now having a high sensitivity is one thing, but having an infinite sensitivity is completely different. Your mouse sensitivity is used to calculate what angle the player is looking at, and when it's set to infinity, the game can't really do these calculations, so it just sets them to nan, aka not a number. This means that when you load up the game, it looks like this. Upon gaining control, the player's angle is instantly set to infinite, and we're blinded by a bright, colorful screen where nothing meaningful is rendered. This basically makes the game unplayable. However, we can actually use this to our advantage by adding another rarely used setting into the equation. Of course, that's our good old friend, the strafe modifier. If you've never used it before, and you probably haven't because it doesn't even have a default keybind, the strafe modifier is an accessibility feature that allows the player to control chill using their mouse. So while the modifier button is pressed, your mouse no longer controls your crosshair and instead moves your character. Speedrunners call this setting +strafe, because that's the name of the command in the developer console. +strafe is even programmed such that the speed at which the player moves is dependent on how fast the player is moving their mouse, and of course, their mouse sensitivity. When we have infinite sensitivity while using +strafe, things start to get out of control. The game tries to calculate your velocity, but ultimately fails to do so properly, and usually just ends up setting it to 0. You can see this very clearly in mid-air. If you hit your +strafe button and turn on infinite sensitivity, you'll simply float in the air and completely ignore gravity, until you decide to let go of your +strafe key. You can also move the mouse during this time to glide in the air. This isn't really too useful on its own, but of course the rabbit hole goes even deeper, because we can bring our bugged infinite values onto our physics objects. In Portal, the player technically has 2 hitboxes. One normal hitbox for most standard collisions with walls and floors, and another one specifically for physics objects. Don't worry too much about all the specifics here. All you need to know is that our physics hitbox is a little more susceptible to infinite values. By standing on top of a physics object to activate your physics hitbox, and then infinite sensitivity strafing, a series of calculations goes awry, and our physics hitbox position is set to nan. As a result of this, trying to collide with props breaks any sort of physics calculations, and the physics engine begins to deteriorate before our eyes, as these props can just get stuck in air or launch the player with a surprising amount of speed upon future collisions. But the most impactful thing you can do here is collide a broken item with any other normal item, as doing this completely shatters reality within the source physics engine, as this triggers a glitch called the item save glitch. The item save glitch, or ISG for short, is a glitch state where items essentially lose proper collision, and can go inside the player, through walls, or skid on the floor. This state is normally achieved by setting up a mildly precise physics interaction on the edge of a portal, but as we've just seen with infinite sensitivity, you can enable this state completely without portals. So just to recap the last couple minutes of explanation, because this one input field isn't properly sanitized, we found a way to completely break the physics engine of Portal just by using 2 objects. Now we can do this infinite +strafe method to get item save glitch at the start of the game, but how exactly can we use this to save time? Well, there's one main property we care about, the ability to push props through solid objects. Specifically, we can push objects into ourselves. When an object is inside the player, quick saving and quick loading will result in the game giving them downward speed, as the game attempts to get the player unstuck. But colliding with new entities completely breaks this unstuck logic, as now the player is stuck inside two objects, and the game really struggles to resolve this gracefully, as it ends up redirecting the player's speed in the opposite direction, now pushing them upwards instead of downwards. By spamming save and load, you can preserve the speed and continue moving upwards. Altogether, we've essentially accomplished an upwarp glitch. Additionally, due to ISG and a continuation of the faulty unstuck logic, the player is able to clip through the ceiling, just floating right through it during the upwarp as if it wasn't even there. Using this in the vault, we can quickly trigger the ISG with the props on the table, and use the radio to upwarp and clip through the ceiling to land out of bounds on the roof of Chamber 0, which is conveniently right below the ending elevator for Chamber 1. Physics objects don't render in out-of-bounds space, so this might look weird, but we did bring the radio with us through the ceiling of the chamber, so we can position ourselves right underneath the elevator and prepare for another upwarp. Since we're out of bounds, this one functions a little differently than the one we just did in the vault, but it's still basically just saving and loading. This puts the player at the bottom of the elevator shaft, where you can jump and activate it, loading the next level after it finishes rising. Done optimally, you finish the first two chambers in just about 30 seconds, well before the original vault portals ever open. The only problem now is that the loading screen preserves our position, so we're stuck at the bottom of the elevator shaft in Chamber 2 with nothing but a radio. This should be an unfortunate end for a speedrun route, but conveniently, there's another very significant glitch with infinite sensitivity that I haven't mentioned yet, called a prop origin warp. When we have our physics hitbox set to Nan, and a prop collides with us while we're moving, the game completely freaks out. The object hitting the player should give them some downward speed, but when the game attempts to do this, every attempt at a physics calculation fails, resulting in the player's position getting set to Nan, infinity. Thankfully, the game properly recognizes that this shouldn't happen, so it sets the player's position to a reasonable default, the world origin at position 0, 0, 0. There's actually multiple ways to warp to the origin of the level using infinite mouse sensitivity, but those might be for another video. I'm telling you about this one because we can use it underneath the Chamber 2 elevator with the radio that we still have with us. And can you guess where the origin of the map is? It could be anywhere between Chambers 2 and 3, or even somewhere out of bounds. But due to some speedrunning miracle, the origin is located right here, right next to the portal gun in Chamber 2, in literally the most perfect spot it could be in. So you can perform the prop origin warp to escape the bottom of the elevator, pick up the portal gun, and carry on with the rest of the speedrun, doing all of the other portal witchcraft stuff that Portal Any% speedrunners do. When you put this all together, speedrunners can upwarp through Chambers 0 and 1, and then instantly teleport to the first obstacle in Chamber 2. And they can do this all without ever seeing any portals, in a game called Portal. This strat is called Hyre Vault Skip, named after the glitch hunter Hyre, who found most of the glitches regarding infinite sensitivity. It can save nearly 30 seconds compared to the old Vault Skip and Egg route. The only problem? This skip sucks to perform. First of all, it's a lot of save and load clipping, so you'll be spending most of your time rhythmically pressing one button and staring at a loading screen. Additionally, upwarping in out-of-bounds space to get into the elevator is tick perfect, so it's pretty easy to mess it up and fail to gain height. Additionally, something I neglected to mention earlier is that the whole breaking physics with infinite sensitivity thing is abhorrently buggy. While I've gone over a lot of the advantageous interactions for speedrunners, there are a ton of interactions that just crash the game. Sometimes you look at a prop the wrong way and the game just closes on you. It's not uncommon for the game to crash while you're trying to perform Hyre Vault Skip, and there's not really a logical rhyme or reason as to why some of these occur, just some infinite value that doesn't get resolved properly. Even the prop origin warp glitch crashes the game shortly after performing it, but thankfully for us, You can prevent the crash by quickly saving and loading. Lastly, the item save glitch is actually a permanent state after you achieve it. As in, once the item save glitch is active, props are broken for the entirety of the session, which would prevent us from performing the prop origin warp and use other props later in the game. The only way to disable ISG is to completely close and relaunch Portal. Because of this, item save glitch was originally banned from Portal speedruns, as closing and reopening the game mid-speedrun would disqualify your run. This is due to cheating concerns, since it's easier to splice during a game relaunch, but also due to timing concerns, as speedruns are timed with in-game time, and timing relaunch and main menu time is an annoying problem to solve. However, after the hyre vault skip was discovered, the community moderators have re-allowed the glitch, but only through creating a custom console command that turns off item save glitch. This is meant to be a temporary solution until we can properly allow game restarts. Since hyre vault skip has been discovered, runners have already found small optimizations, as hyre originally presented the trick by climbing on the glass ledge in the vault, but other players have suggested using the toilet or the table in the vault to start the upwarp. The variant that uses the toilet was dubbed Dylan's Skibbity Toilet Skip, and the variant that uses the table was called Dylan's Corner Kebab Restaurant Skip 2025. This is a reminder that, despite finding all of these absurd glitches, the Portal speedrunning community is, at its core, stupid. These are mostly meme names though, as most people refer to it as hyre vault skip. Since its discovery, only 2 top runners have gotten faster times with the new strat, runners Lacuni and Wyrnicus. Notably, Wyrnicus has been chipping down the first place time, with 6 unique world record runs since the trick's discovery. The record now sits at 5 minutes and 19 seconds, 20 seconds faster than the world record before hyre vault skip was discovered. There's still more time to be saved here, but Out of Bounds is a very hard run and hyre vault skip is a very hard trick. Regardless, 20 seconds saved in a storied 5.5 minute speedrun is an unbelievable feat. It seems like Portal speedrunners have conquered the simplest, most trivial part of the game by turning it into one of the most absurd and broken skips, just by using a settings page, completely without the game's titular feature. And who knows if this is the ultimate solution for the vault, as after 18 years, we're still finding new game-breaking glitches in Portal, so a faster skip might just be around the corner. Until then though, make sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.